Thank you for joining. This is our first community session. We had a session last week, was for a different group of folks, but my favorite is doing work with the community and connecting with the community. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Darryl Tonemah. I am Kiow, Comanche, and Tuscarora. I live just outside Niagara Falls, New York. The Tuscarora Res is one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee. You probably know us better as the Iroquois. But actually, the word Iroquois is a mispronunciation of an Abenaki word because they hated us. They were warring tribes, and they called us Iroquois, which meant black snakes. And the French traders thought they were saying Iroquois. So they kind of named us that, but to claim our own narrative and to say, no, that's not who we are. We're not black snakes. We are the Haudenosaunee, which it means people who build the longhouse. So my little res here is a little 5 mile by 5 mile res. I live out here. I do a lot of telepsychology. I actually started doing telepsychology probably about 3 years ago, before COVID even started. But I thought it was a way to reach more of our communities in more places that maybe they were having trouble having access to care. And I thought, well, I got a computer right here, and I don't have to wear dress pants. I can wear something nice up top and go to work that way. And I thought that's a good way to reach people. So I have a team of folks that I get to work with to help get to our native communities. That's what I get to do for a living. I'm a psychologist, and I specialize in stress and trauma and how it affects the brain and the body and behavior. And I hope that I can hook you guys in today, and then you can tell your friends and have them tell their friends, because we're going to get to have a lot of conversations coming up in the new year. And they're going to be conversations that I want to be useful for you and for your home and for your kids and for the community, that we can start becoming sovereign in our own skin. That sovereignty in our community context is we're in charge of our own language and ceremony and finances, and that's community sovereignty. But individual sovereignty is, what am I in charge of in this moment? And if I can just control my reactions, my physiological responses in this moment, that's a sovereign moment, and it increases my capacities. So I don't feel compelled to drink, hit, smoke, use, make bad decisions. We actually can keep that juice and really turn the corner for ourselves and for our communities. And that's doable. Everything I'm saying is doable. And I'm not just saying, oh, it's doable, we shall try hard. By the time we're done, over the next 6 months or so, we are going to have skills and tools that maybe you didn't even know previously. And what's really cool, a couple things that I think are just awesomely cool. One is many of the tools are already involved in our culture. The ceremony, the sing, the dance, sweat, the spirituality, all of that is actually part of spiritual, and listen to this, and physiological healing. And we'll touch on that stuff. But I'll give you other tools as well, because I want you to explore that through yourself. I want you to put it through that filter for yourself. If that's how you see the world, that's what I really want. That's one thing. The second thing I think is really cool is we pretty much have everything we need to heal. It's not in the dispensary at the clinic. It's not at the drugstore. It's not at the liquor store. It's not at the tobacco store. It's not at the smoke shop. We have everything we need to heal. It already exists. So we don't want our healing as Native people to become chemistry. I don't want my brain health to be chemistry. I mean, what we're going to learn is Creator put us together for goodness and for wellness. And we're probably doing a lot of these things already. We just got to make them work for us. And what it looks like today is anxiety and stress and depression and ADHD and addictions. That's the way those things are presenting in unhealthy ways. But in our communities, we're lifting each other, we're taking care of each other, we have respect for elders. And so we have a lot of good things going for us. We just got to make them work for us. So ultimately, over time, we're going to explore these things. You know what? I might probably even do this spiel again when more people join in the next few sessions. So maybe at some point you guys will be saying instead of me, that's what I hope. Work myself out of work here. So here's what I'm down with. I am totally down with, like I said, how culture and ceremony and language can affect our well-being and literally our physiology, how we're put together, how a creator put us together for goodness. Those things affect that. And we'll talk about in the future some of the ways that I could recommend to work with you. But I'm not going to say to you from New York to where you are, saying, well, here's what you need to do in South Dakota with your traditions and your summer, because that shouldn't be my role. But I do hope that you tap those folks in the community that do have that as their role and collaborate with them. What I'll do is show you some other things, like I said, but I want you to put through that filter, because I will be totally honest with you. I really want our communities to heal from the bottom of my heart. I have had the blessing and opportunity to go to about 90% of the reses in the US and probably about half of them in Ontario. And many are having this conversation right now, and we are so close. Man, we are so close. We just have to start leaning into it as a group of people. The healing. And COVID has set us back a little bit. And I'm going to talk about that today, is how it may have set us back. And we need to recognize that it's been a setback and how it is affecting us and how we can regain our footing moving forward. So that's the goal for today, is kind of look at what COVID did. And then we're just going to add and add and add and add all over our time together. That's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. Just so you know, I was raised in the Dakotas. I lived on Standing Rock for about 8 years, my formative years, my wonder years. In 48, I was raised in 48. Dad worked at the clinic there, and we lived at that house right across from the mission. So when you cruise up to 48, you see that, I think it's blue now, blue house right across the mission. That was my house. That's where I grew up. We played football in the backyard there. And I've experienced plenty of wedgies on Standing Rock, just so you know. And then we moved to Aberdeen, and then I experienced a different type of wedgie. But I go back to South Dakota. I come back to South Dakota. I consider myself kind of a South Dakota boy. I come back. Well, I was coming back monthly last year. Until COVID, I was coming back monthly for about a week. So I spent a quarter of the year in South Dakota. And so getting to do this is really cool for me. So that's that. That's a little bit about me. I got a Navajo wife. She's at home right now with our 3 kidlets, 3 little chocolate kids. Gracie Parks and Jack are sitting at home. And she's from Arizona, and I dragged her here to Western New York, where the sun will start shining again in June. Okay. So what I want to jump in with today is just COVID stuff, because here's the present moment. And I want to make sure that we're okay within the present moment, because we want to start building and building and building and building. And it starts today. Healing starts right here in the present. Right now, we can't go back and change the narrative of the past. What we can do is change the experience of how it's affecting me now. And we're going to learn about that in the future. That doesn't change the fact that that was awful. But what I want to do physiologically with us is recognize that here's where I am now. And here's the tools I have to address this right now. And pretty soon the things that happened, and it could be relatively recent past, abuses and neglect and alcoholism and things like that. If those things are in the relative recent past, they have a weight in us and they affect our behavior today. So what I want us to do is recognize those things that where it lives in us today. And once we start unplugging some of that stuff, that thing happened, but it doesn't determine my life anymore. That's sovereignty. So diving into COVID, I will revisit this 100 times between now and our time is done. But how Creator put us together is that we're electrical. That's pretty amazing. So check out my toy here. So here's my favorite little toy, and it needs electricity to work. That's me. That's me. All me. Check it out. That's all me. So what it needs, I'm the conduit. I'm electrical. I'm making that happen. And so in Korean research about 8 years ago, found that this electrical charge bounces around our body just south of the speed of light on miles and miles and miles of cable. And it goes where we want it to go. So everyone right now, wiggle your toes. This is an honor system. I can't see anybody's head. I'll just trust that you're wiggling your toes, okay? All right, I'll trust that you did that. Think about what a miracle that is. How Creator put us together. That is a miracle. I had a neurochemical impulse. It went down some nerve endings and some muscle, and I was doing that and it didn't take any time at all. It happened just like that. Wasn't a big deal. Same thing now. Everyone blink for me. Are you blinking? Again, honor system. You think about what a miracle that is. You made a neurochemical decision and it made your eyes do that. It was pretty amazing. Now, this charge, and I'll dive deeper into this probably in our next conversation, but this charge, when tough things happen in our lives, stress, a traumatic event, a traumatic moment, ongoing stress, like COVID, it goes to the stress parts of our brain, which are way back here. The stress part of our brain is way back here. So it recognizes stressful situations and goes to the stress part of our brain for the purposes of survival. Now, many of us have some tough stories and tough things that happened in our lives. But what is interesting is COVID is something that's happening to all of us. And all of us are experiencing it in slightly different ways, depending on a million different factors. But listen to this, chronic stress. So here's life pre-COVID, it's still stressful, but it wasn't like COVID stressful, but life was like this. COVID is this level. It's higher because anything new creates this kind of crackle in the stress parts of our brain. It keeps us activated, and that charge keeps us kind of on defense mode. And over time, listen to this now, over time, that can feel like stressors or traumas. It can be stored very similarly to an event, a traumatic event. It's just that this event has been 10 months long. It's still an event. It's just a long one. So listen to this now. If you had tough stuff previously at home when you were younger, we get a little bit preloaded for stress or even traumatic responses. So maybe alcoholism, things like that in the home, abuses in the home. Then this comes along and this can feel pretty big to us then. And I've talked with a lot of folks that are having a lot of struggles with stress, anxiety, depression since COVID started. Why is that? Good question. You guys are asking wonderful questions. Because when the novelty, when something new comes into our lives, that part of the brain crackles a little bit. Think about when you got a new job, when you met a new person, when you started something different, when you walk into a room that you haven't been in before. Maybe you don't freak out, but your body kind of responds a little bit. Novelty, newness, activates that part of the brain. So it makes sense that having this season of COVID may be kind of stressful for some folks. And it doesn't make it you crazy or ruined or broken or anything. I have talked to hundreds of people that are expressing this from all different backgrounds and socioeconomic status and ethnicities. So it's universal. But here's some ways that you can kind of recognize it. Did your sleep change? I know when this first happened, my Carmen, like I go to bed around 11 and I'll get up about 6:30. That's kind of how I roll. And I was up to like 2 in the morning, just sitting there in the living room, watching Sports Center. And they show the same Sports Center over and over and over again. So I was watching Sports Center for the 19th time. And I thought, I should go to bed. It's 2 in the morning. I haven't been up till 2 in the morning since I was in Aberdeen at the zoo. And so Carminda and I talked about it. I said, we should just try to keep a pattern. And because I was sleeping, I was going to bed at 2, I was waking up at 9, which was ridiculous for me. So if your sleep patterns have changed, that may be a symptom of something. If your eating patterns have changed, if you started eating a whole bunch, or you've lost a lot of weight, if you don't have interest in things that you had interest in before, if you can't get out of bed, if it's occupying your mind all the time. And there's different levels of depression. There's not just the one. So here's your normal functioning pre-COVID, and then you kind of feel it, and maybe you're here now. And this maybe I don't have as much energy. I can't focus like I used to. I really don't have the kind of interest in stuff that I used to. That's kind of right here, a dip. And then there's a major one. You go, and it bottoms out. And you can't get out of bed. You don't have any energy. You don't want to go to work. And you kind of stay down there. And what's one of the indicators of this, and now I really want you guys to hear this, is our increases in suicide ideation or suicidality. Because if you're going down like this, in this range here, you still have energy. You still have energy, but you're depressed. That's where you're going to see more suicidal ideation. Down here, there's not a lot of energy to do it. But if you went to the clinic and started taking an antidepressant and you're coming out, that's the same level. You have energy, but you're still depressed. And that's where we're seeing more suicidal thoughts and more suicidal ideation in our communities, that my options are becoming more and more limited. So when everything's fully functional, our options like this, but as we get more and more constricted and confined and depressed, our options seem smaller and smaller and smaller. And I start out with this because if you're having these kind of things, it's not uncommon. So you have access to things in the folks in the community that can help you through this. We have to know that COVID isn't going to be permanent. It is here for a while, but the folks in your community and needing you as a resource in the community, that's the permanent things. So be sure to connect with somebody if you're feeling any of these ways that I'm describing right now. So as probably there's mostly adults on here, I'd imagine, mostly grown-ups. And our role in the healing of our community as grown-ups is our kids are watching us. It's called social referencing. Our kids are watching us and seeing, how am I supposed to be during this time? So my 3 little chocolate kids at home, Gracie, Parks, and Jack Jack, they're watching dad and mom to say, this is hard. The stuff they're saying on TV is scary. How do I be? How am I to be during this time? And they look up. And kids universally look up. They don't look horizontally. They don't look at other kids to know how to be. They look at the adult. And think about it, when you have a child and that child biffs, they fall down, maybe like a 2-year-old. First person they look at is the closest to the adult, right? They hit and they go, and if the adult is like, huh? The kid's like, I got it. Huh? But if the adult is calm, like, what's up? And the baby will be like chilling, because they're recognizing, how am I supposed to be? So it's really important, because we talk about take care of the kids, take care of the kids, take care of the kids. But when we're talking about healing, we have to take care of ourselves, because the kids are observing that. So it's not the responsibility of my kids to heal. It's my responsibility of me to stay well, so my kids have the opportunity to stay well, to heal. So I'm glad you are on the call today, that this generation is on this call. So I'm just going to dive in and talk about some things we can do during COVID season to make sure that we're okay. I always start with internal and external resources. An internal resource is something that you have going for yourself. You've made it this far. Shoot, Annie, you've made it this far already. You did it. You did it. I made it this far already. I'm good. I did it. But there's things that helped me get this far. Either it was family or community to live this long. So an internal resource is something we have inside of us that helped you get this far. And like for me, prayerfulness, I pray a lot. Playfulness, I love playing with my kids. I like to run. I like to play music. I like to spend time with my family. All those are internal resources that get me through the day. An external resource is something I use outside of myself that help me get me through the day. And what occurs if we don't recognize the good things, the strengths we have, our external resources can become drugs or drinking or smoking. We're using it. Now hear me say this, because I'll probably say this in the future as well. We're using an external tool for an internal event. If I'm feeling stressed, you think about some of the folks that I work with that have addiction problems, they feel like this inside and they want to feel better. And so they're picking an external tool to try to make themselves feel better, but it's the wrong ones. It's the unhealthy ones. It's the unwell ones. So we want to do is start leaning into this season of COVID, and man, it's going to be great. We come out of this 6 months from now and we can look back and say, that was tough, but look who we became as individuals or as a community. That's going to be a good day. So what we want to do is make sure our internal resources are working for us and our external resources are healthy. So what does that mean? When I'm stressed or I'm tired, I make sure that I go for a run. So my internal resource is I like to run. My external resource would be my running road. I'm musical, I like to play music. And so I'll go in the basement and I will just shred on guitar, and I will light it up. And I'm going to come to South Dakota and I'm going to peel the paint off your walls at some point playing guitar, because that's one of my external tools. So part of this wellness talk is what has gotten you this far in a good way? What good things have gotten you this far? And how can you really start making them work for you? Instead of having default, part of us leaning into this season is, what am I choosing? How can I start becoming weller? And we're going to find out over the next few minutes is that it's stuff we're already doing. We just need to make it work for us. Let's keep going. Okay. Stick to a routine. Like I said earlier, getting up and going to bed at kind of a decent time, a regular time. Why is that? Good question. Because pre-COVID season, your brain, we've taught our brain to fire and wire in a certain way. Our brain knows our habits. It doesn't form our habits. It recognizes the habits and shuts us on and turns us off whenever it needs to. So if you start waking up if you usually get up at 7, but you start getting up at 9, the melatonin, the sleep chemical in the brain starts to get kind of messed up. It fires and wires differently if you don't have a routine. And chaos, anxiety doesn't like chaos. Anxiety decreases when you have a routine. So we decided, well, let's get up at a certain time and kind of go to bed at a certain time. And let's have the kids do the schooling thing here. And I come here to the office. And So we try to have routines in our lives because that helps. It helps the stressed brain. So if you're feeling a little stressed, just kind of write down what you'd like to do throughout the day. It doesn't have to be strict. Don't go crazy over it. But kind of write down the things you'd like to knock out during the day and have a flow to your day. Get up at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time. That actually helps with stress and depression. So it's a simple tool. Get up and get dressed. That, again, the same thing, your body. So it's called wake hygiene and sleep hygiene. So when you wake up, you pop out of bed and you have a routine, then you put some clothes on like you do something, the brain says, oh, well, let me turn the melatonin down. Let me crank up the dopamine, the reward chemical in the brain. And let's get you moving for the day. The reward and motivation, that's the dopamine. But if we kind of sit around, we crawl out to the couch and we lay there till noon, that part of the brain says, well, I'm not sure what to do with this information. So if you're starting to feel a little sluggish or a little anxiety, get up out of bed and act like you're going to have a day. We had to start doing that with our kids because we were, we distance learn. Hold on, let me get a drink. We distance learn with the kids, and they were kind of just laying around all day long and eating chips and playing Fortnite. Pretty good parenting. And we decided after a while, so let's have them get up, brush their teeth, wash their face, and put a shirt on like they're going to go to school. And come to find out, that changed them because the brain had fired and wired previously to a system. And so once you start doing that for yourself and for your kids, it actually helps. So just try it. Like for me, I come here to the office and I get out of bed, shower, do everything, and come to the office, and I dress like a hobo on the way here. But then I have I got shirts here in the office, and I'm still in my pajama bottoms, but I look like a professional up top. That's the goal, Annie. I'm trying to pull that off. Exercise daily. So look at what we've talked about so far: sleep, waking up in a good way, and exercising. What? Yeah. Like I said before, we have so many internal tools already for goodness, already for wellness. We just have to make it work for us. So if you exercise 30 minutes a day, well, let me qualify that. If you don't exercise at all right now, 5 minutes is fine. And then once you start getting into roll, then do 7 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then 12 minutes. Just do that way. Because for all the same reasons, Creator put these chemicals in us, our body, for goodness and wellness. And if we're not making it work for us, we want to help our body help us. So the dopamine is a reward chemical in the brain, and the endorphin is the feel-good chemical in the brain. So when you walk, you actually release those things. Just 30 minutes. Like I said, but if you don't exercise at all, don't go at it. Don't be a tough mudder. You see those things where they have to run a marathon and bike 20 miles and then swim. Don't have to do that. Just walk down the road. I recommend knowing the roads that don't have the dogs. On our road, our house, I know where the dogs live, so I'll go the other way, or I'll go right up to the dogs and then sprint. Okay. Drink water. Stay hydrated. Look at what we've talked about: sleep, wake, exercise, water. So cortisol is our stress hormone in our body. Actually, what cortisol's job is to tell the body that stress is no longer occurring. But if it's not convinced that stress is no longer occurring, the cortisol stays high, stays elevated. And so the body feels under stress. Drinking water actually helps. You don't want the cortisol to get all concentrated because it can make us feel unwell. It can affect digestion. So you want to make sure we're drinking enough water. And most of us don't drink enough water. I don't know if Mountain Dew counts as water. Coffee can actually take away water out of your body. So drink water to help the cortisol flush. There you go. Help the cortisol flush out of your body. It's a simple thing, but if we're not doing that, the body is not sure what to do with this lack of information, this lack of water, so it doesn't have the opportunity to flush that out. Eat well. Look at this. Sleep, wake, exercise, drink water, and eating. What should I say about eating? The dopamine, remember we mentioned dopamine? So we have some nerves in our body that do this. And one goes here and one goes through all the major organs and then ends up in the pit of our stomach. And it is the healthiness of the stomach is called, does it have flora in the pit of the stomach? Is it nice and flora-ish, Floridian, florid? Is it good? If it is good, it sends messages up that vagus nerve, up that nerve to the brain. It says, we're all good down here, man. Let's produce some dopamine. Let's get the person feeling good and healthy and decrease stress levels. But if that flora at the bottom of the stomach is matted down like that, is not healthy, it sends the message, well hold on. We're not ready for anything. We're not ready for goodness. We can't produce goodness. And how that happens is if we're eating a lot of junk food. If we eat a lot of junk food, it's called the obesogenic diet. What? That's harsh. It's called the obesogenic diet. High fat, high calorie, greasy, carbohydrate, which is, most of our diet here on the res is that kind of food. But if we can get back to traditional ways of eating, and here it's corn, beans, and squash, deer, rabbit, lean meats, beans, legumes, all that stuff, the traditional diet was so much healthier. And it helps with the flora in the stomach. And once we start eating weller in that way, the flora changes, and actually our depression and anxiety change. Well, sometimes as a psychologist, one of the first things I do is as we talk about nutrition. Look at there. Taking this class next week. Food and mood. Yeah, taking that class next week. Because I used to think, come on, how can me having the Snickers affect my mood while I down my Big Mac? How can this affect stuff? But come to find out, we had this indigenous way of knowing. We listened to the body before. And when we got away from that and other traumas were introduced, we kind of lost the roadmap. And once we can get back to that kind of nutrition, that kind of active lifestyle, drinking the water, look at that. Those are things that are so simple that can help us in a season of COVID. One of the things that is super cool about us in our communities is our clans. So I'm a White Bear clan of the Haudenosaunee here. And what's cool about the clan system is there was always somebody watching out for you. You always had relatives somewhere. You were connected to a community. And what COVID is trying to do, which we don't have to let it do, since we have technology, is trying to dismember that sense of community. And so reaching out and feeling that connection is a very traditional behavior as well. Look at everything we've talked about so far. It's an indigenous way of knowing. So it's nothing new. It's just, let's point ourselves, particularly during seasons where there's higher suicide rates, there are higher depression rates, there's higher anxieties. And during COVID season, now is the time to do these things, reconnect. And I'm gonna say a cool phrase now. Here we go, come on now. Healing doesn't occur alone in silos. Healing occurs in community. Come on now, come on. Healing does not occur in silos and alone. Healing occurs in community. And maybe you are part of the community that heals somebody else. Let me say it again, it sounded cool. Maybe you are part of the community that heals somebody else. So stay engaged as much as you can. I know it's tough. It's tough right now, but I get calls. I get a lot of calls from dude buddies. Is that what I want to say? Like my I don't even know how to say this, Annie. My man friends, I don't know. My buddies from all over the country and Canada, people will call me because they want to stay connected. And the males, I don't know what it is about the males where we think we have to be strong. And so it feels good to have other men want to connect and create a community. And I promise there's people in your community that want to do the same thing. We just have to start lifting each other and being accessible for those things. Indigenous ways of knowing, that's a clan right there. Let's keep going. Whew, I'm getting excited. Let's just talk all night. Okay. Spend extra time playing with kids. Spend extra time playing with kids. Expect that there's going to be behavior problems. There will be behavior problems because the kids' little brains, everyone hear me say this, when your child is born, when you were born, when I was born, our brains were only 17% done developing. And so it doesn't know what to make of COVID. A 5-year-old's brain doesn't know what to think about COVID. A 10-year-old doesn't know what to think about COVID. That's why it's so essential that they have a well adult to look to. Sober, safe, consistent, present, especially during COVID season, because their brains are firing and wiring. And we don't want this generation of Native young kids to be 20 years old and have this stored in them as this stressful charge. We want them to be able to feel safe now, because that changes their outcomes in the future. And they borrow, hear me say this is important, they borrow our safety because their brains haven't figured it out yet. So they look to an adult and the child borrows the safety of the adult. So if the stronger and more present and safe we are, the healthier they're going to come out of this. And I really like how Annie talked about being present earlier. I'll talk more about this in the future, but there's part of our brain right here that measures time. So I've been talking, it feels like about 45 minutes. Maybe to you guys, it feels like 20 hours. For me, it feels like 45 minutes, okay? And I was pretty close. Okay. I didn't know that, I just guessed it. It felt like about 45 minutes. How do you do that? How do you know that? Because that part of your brain, a creator put there, measures time for us. But when we have a lot of stress in our lives, when we're younger, that part of our brain has trouble measuring time. It has trouble, listen to this, this is just what Annie was saying. It has trouble being in the present. Because what it's doing is it's trying to pull us back to when the stressful times occurred. It wants to make our body feel like they're occurring again. Or, listen to this, it's pushing us forward to what could happen. What if? And so we start stressing about what could happen. And hear me say this, healing occurs right now in the present. Healing occurs in the present. The present is a sensory experience. Sight, you see, you hear, you taste, you smell. That's what's happening right now. The future is hypothetical. But we create these stresses about it. And it takes us, and here's where Annie was going with this. It takes us out of this moment. And she was saying, come to this moment and let's heal together. So practice that. If you want to practice that, just look around the room. What do you see, feel, taste, touch, smell? Yeah. See, feel, taste, touch, smell. That's what's happening right now. The past isn't happening. It may feel like it, but it's actually not. And the future is not happening. What we have is right now. And right now is when we connect with each other. Right now is when I connect with my kids. Right now is when we heal. Right now is when I heal my kids because they feel safe and they're borrowing my safety. And so when I said play with your kids, engage with your kids, it's more than just a good idea. It's essential for them. I have had my favorite job, my favorite thing is raising my 3 little chocolate buggers. That's my man. I hope they get to meet you guys someday. I just think they're awesome. And that's just, I'm being a homer, I'm their dad. But that's what I'm supposed to think because I'm their dad. And so I've spent more nights in cardboard forts in the past 10 months than I ever wanted to, but that's what they needed. They needed dad connected. And the more dad connected, the more they felt safe. The more they felt safe, the more their behavior changed for the better, the more their capacity to learn changed. So hear me say this, dive into your kids. Become fascinated. Love on them in good ways. Okay, let's keep going. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Give yourself a break, man. This, like I said, here's where we were before. COVID is just elevation and stress because you can't help it because things have changed. Liberties have changed. You can't come and go as you please. You got to hold your breath around people. All this stuff, that just changes us. And so we're a little more activated. This crackly part is in the stress center of our brain is a little bit more activated, and it can make us a little more edgy. We can get more mad at others quickly. We can beat ourselves up more quickly, which leads to anxiety and depression and anger and reactionism and unhealthy relationships. So kind of watch yourself. Be aware of what it feels like in you. Don't just say, well, I got mad. What does being mad feel like in you before you react to it? We're gonna unpack this stuff even more and more and more. So I hope you guys keep coming back because, man, I'm just excited to go through these conversations with you. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Chun. Okay. Limit the social media stuff if it starts to drive you crazy. The news, the information. Oh, I had to scale mine back to, it was like what's going on in the world in March, and then what's going on in the United States, and then what was going on in Western New York, and what's happening on my res, and pretty soon it's just what's going on in my house. Here's what I have control over. Focusing on the things that we in fact have control over. There's things socially that I don't have control over, that you don't have control over on your res. In your community, you have control over if you are going to drink or not, or smoke, or you control over if you're going to spend time with kids. You have control if you're going to exercise or not. Go for a walk. Just go for a walk. Don't even call it exercise. Just go for a walk, a wellness walk. Those are things that we look at our circle, and whose circles am I involved in intimately? And how do we affect each other? So Carminda, my wife, and Gracie, and Parks, and Jack, and then my parents, they live close, and then my brother, he and his family live close. So that's this group I really want to take care of. I really want us all to take care of each other and be healthy and well in good ways, and lift each other and just make sure we're okay. That's some things that I have control of. And enjoying them and being present with them and enjoying them in this moment. That's things I have control of. I don't have control over a lot of public policy or policy on the res or the United States, but I can hug my mom. So I do that. Okay, what else I got here? Notice the good. Notice the good in the world. There's a lot of good things happening. There's good things happening on your res right now. Did you know that? There's good things happening on your res right now. What's one of the cool things that happened on our res was just out of the blue, a food and clothing and water supply center just sprung up. We didn't need an act of the chiefs to do it. We didn't have to have a policy. We just said, hey, there's people in need, and I got extra toilet paper, or we have extra water. If you have extra, just take it over there. Somebody who needs it is going to use it. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought it was a very sovereign, individually sovereign moment that created a sovereign moment for the community. I think that was great. So there's good things happening. Let's see here. One of my favorite things about our communities is you can go to anybody's house and people are laughing. Humor is one of the beautiful things about Native people. And you know that. It's one of the awesome things about Native people, and I don't think it's a defense mechanism. I think it's this way of us being healthy and well and finding humor in our days, in our lives. So continue doing that. Laugh a lot. Watch your kids and just look at how goofy they are. Kids love to be goofy. And engage, dive in there with them. One of my favorite things, kind of what I kind of try to remind myself and Carminda, my wifey, is that parenting isn't a spectator sport. Parenting is, let's dive in there. And that's kind of been a guide for me ever since my kids have been around, is let me dive in there. So enjoy that. Find laughter, find levity, find humor in every day. A couple other things, then our time's up already. How's that possible? I know for you, like I said, this feels like it's been 10 hours, but for me, it feels like it's been like 5 minutes. Okay. Let me just revisit this again. If you have any of those symptoms like I described earlier, there's no shame in my game. Find help. It's better to have you around. Uh-oh. Are you still there, Annie?
I'm here.
Okay. Find help. You have so many resources there that want to be of use to you. That's their mission. And so maybe there's a stigma that you feel about behavioral health or being sad or depressed. Those days are just gone. It's a whole new season. It's a whole new game now. So if you're feeling stressed or depressed, anything that I described earlier, contact somebody. It's better to have you around and having these conversations. That's how change is going to occur in our communities with you involved. Remind yourself that this is temporary. It's an event. It's a long event, but by definition, an event has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And at some point, it'll end. And we just got to muscle through and lift each other and support each other till that time comes. And it's not that far off. It'll end. So just, if something feels like it's going to be forever, it becomes insufferable. If you're getting a shot at the doctor and they say it's going to hurt like this the rest of your life, well, that would just kind of suck. But you know you can take a shot for 2 seconds and it's done. Because we know that it has an end. This event's going to have an end. So maintain your wellness, take care of yourself, take care of each other. And the last thing is really challenge yourself and pray about it to find the meaning in this. The meaning in COVID, in the season in our country, in our lives, in your life. I know that I can personally, and it sucks for everybody. I would love to be able to go see Wonder Woman's coming out this week, for crying out loud. And our theaters are closed here, so I can't go see Wonder Woman. Hold on, I just had a sad moment. Okay. But finding the lesson, even though I can't go see Wonder Woman, this has been a blessing to really evaluate the relationship with my wife and my kids and what I do for a living, and in good ways. in good ways. And for some folks, it's a season that say, well, maybe this is my sobriety season. Maybe this is something that pushed me in that direction because I want to come out of this stronger. I can hit the ground running after this is over. And that's good. Man, what an opportunity. Man, that's a beautiful opportunity. And what a day is going to be when we're going to look back at COVID season and say, here's the good that came out of it. And here's what I became. And here's what my family became. And here's what my community became. If we look at it in those ways, even though we've had lost loved ones, we can learn lessons from them and carry that forward. So we want to kind of really, I think I want to emphasize this, the sense of have as much community as you can, lift yourself and lift the loved ones because those go together. And remember, really think about the indigenous ways of knowing that we were healthy, we drank, water, we ate good things that helped our body help ourselves. Now, as we move forward in these conversations, I won't get to see you for a couple of weeks, I don't think.
Next week.
Is that next week I get them again? Okay, so starting next week, I might touch on some of this stuff because hopefully we'll have more people. We want this thing to snowball. We're gonna kind of get the foundations of stress and trauma, and not to activate people, but at every time we meet, we want to have what is occurring and what are some tools. Every time we meet, I want you to leave feeling empowered and that you aren't a victim to your traumas anymore. I want you to feel empowered every time. Questions, comments, thoughts before we have to hang up already?